Hello and welcome to Global Market Bulletin TV. Today we're back with Geert Kersten, CEO of CEL-SCI, to discuss recent news with the company since we last spoke in May of 2023, CVM. Mr. Kersten, it is a true pleasure to have you back with us today. For those who are unfamiliar with CEL-SCI and may just be learning about the company, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about your team's dedication to research and improving the treatment of cancer?
Well, thank you, Leila. First of all, thank you for having us back, okay? Our idea is to make the first cancer treatment more successful. And as many of the viewers have probably experienced, if you don't conquer the first cancer successfully, and that's why they use radiation and chemo and surgery all together, if it comes back, it's not a good thing, right? Very often it's the beginning of the end. So we want to make the chance of the first cancer treatment more successful by activating your immune system to fight the cancer, in addition to the other stuff. And maybe someday we can eliminate surgery, radiation, chemo, but initially it's just to help you live.
Mm-hmm. Now, you recently announced a significantly positive outcome. You recently had a meeting with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration regarding the path to approval for your pre-surgical investigational cancer immunotherapy Multikine. So can you tell us a bit more about what this news means for the future of CEL-SCI and Multikine?
So first of all, I learned that FDA is just like everybody else. They have to get to know you. They have to learn to trust you. It takes time. You don't go in there and you say A, B, C, blah, blah, and it's done. So it takes time. When you do something new, they have to get comfortable with it. In our case, in fact, it wasn't FDA, but another regulator told us they have never seen a pre-surgical cancer drug. You see, that's what we do. Today, very often, the first treatment in cancer is surgery. But what if you can give an immunotherapy to activate your immune system to fight the cancer? Because the problem is not that your immune system is weak. The problem is your immune system cannot see the tumor. So we give our drug first, before surgery, radiation, chemo, helping the immune system realize that there is a tumor. And so this is a novel idea, but so we're testing it with head and neck cancer, right? Why? Because it's one of the cancers where you've had the least successes. It's one of the biggest. It's from under your nose down to your clavicle, about 900,000 people a year. Very little success. It's like the weed in your backyard that you cannot get rid of. Whatever you do, you cut it out, it comes right back. Mm-hmm. But this is not limited. So you're just testing it out on that. Then you want to go to breast cancer, melanoma. The idea is novel because usually cancer drugs are being tested in dying patients. I mean, honestly, if you think of the people who you know have died, it's too late. So maybe you can give them a few months of extra life, and it's wonderful if they reach that next Christmas or that next grandchild's birthday or something, right?
Yeah.
But isn't it better if you stop them up front to ever become a dying cancer patient? If you make that first cancer treatment more successful? That's what we're about. So it took a while with FDA because we had to explain this. It also took a while, and we didn't understand that initially, but it makes perfect sense. FDA is much stricter for newly diagnosed people. Just think of your own personal experiences, right? If someone in your family or friends has cancer, as a first treatment, when there's surgery, radiation, chemo, are you going to rush into something risky or that has massive downside? No. You will only do that when the patient is dying as a last resort. So FDA, what they say is physicians, rule number one is do no harm, right? So we had to overcome that. And that's once we had done so, once FDA saw that we do no harm, once we saw FDA, you will see the data. You should ask me about the data later on because I really want to tell you the data. It's so good.
Well, let's
That's
talk about that data. Yeah, I would love to jump right into that,
So
actually.
think about it. So we have tested our drug in 750 people. You might say, oh, that's a lot of people. It's a lot of testing. It's taking a long time. And the answer is yes, because we're doing something that other people haven't done before, right? If you're testing something in dying cancer patients, literally you have 100 roadmaps you can follow. You can work it with your eyes closed practically. Yeah. But if you're going through the virgin forest one no one's walked before like we are, you don't have that roadmap. So therefore, we created our own roadmap. 750 people tested so long, and long-term testing, because that's the only true measure. We then figured out who are the people who do best. And the only thing that matters is, do you live or not, right? Mm-hmm. So, some of the other things that people talk about, in our minds, they don't matter because people want to live. So the data we have is, and this is the population that FDA approved for this confirmatory registration study, which means an approval study, only 212 patients.
Yes.
It's in the later stages of head and neck cancer, and there's some details which I'll skip here. We have 73% survival when you give our drug plus the standard of care versus 45% without our drug. Mm-hmm. In a disease where no one has had success in decades. It's huge.
That is huge.
By the way, for an approval, we only need to show 10% improvement in survival.
Oh, wow.
So we're 28. The way the FDA counts it is the difference between 73 and 45. That's 28. They called it absolute. We need to show 10. So we feel pretty good that we should be successful. Then there's something that they call a hazard ratio. And by the way, the p-value for that measurement was outstanding. It's 0.0015 log rank, which anyone in the scientific community knows it is much better than you need to be. Again, margin for error for that final study. And I'm sorry to bore certain people who don't have an interest in this, but FDA cares about these things deeply. We have a hazard ratio of 0.35. Now, what does that mean? You compare the rate of death of the control group with the people who get our drug. So if you have a hazard ratio of 1, it means they're dying at the equal rates. You want it to be way below 1. Mm-hmm. Ours is a 0.35. Think about that one. 0.35 people die with our drug Multikine every time one patient dies without Multikine. That means 3 times more people die without our drug. It's kind of obvious what group you want to be in, right?
Of course.
Much higher survival, rate of death, much lower with our drug. And then one last point I want to make here. FDA is concerned about would you harm a few people here and there, right? That has to be a concern because these are newly diagnosed patients and they won't accept that. They will accept it for dying cancer patients. In fact, they have drugs that have black boxes on them saying this may kill you and they're still approved, but not for us. The way they look at that is it's called the upper limit of your hazard ratio. It's 0.66. Which is still way below what you need for approval, and it's way below any level where you would be concerned. It still shows a great survival benefit. Mm-hmm. Now, it took us a long time to get to this time where we figured out exactly where our drug works. But isn't that exactly the reason why you have clinical trials? Right? You figure out where it works, and then you bring it to market. So now we have to do the study.
Geert, I have to ask you this though, because as a layperson who, I think all of us, when you say, the facts might bore some people, I doubt that because I don't think that there's any one of us who hasn't been affected by cancer through someone they know or someone they're related to. So I think it's important for everybody and they're interested to know what the data shows. But any type of cancer, even survivable cancers, you still have to undergo certain treatments to eradicate that cancer. So be it chemotherapy or radiation. And if there is that warning label that the treatment may kill you. Well, how is that any different than taking your proposed treatment?
Well, they're stricter for us, right? So for dying cancer patients, they're all going to die.
Yeah.
So if they die from the drug, it just accelerates it. And so if there is benefit to the group and some people will die, that means that the group is better off. And you haven't really worsened anything because they're going to die in any case. In our group, it's about 45% of people who will survive with the current treatments of surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. Now we know it's toxic, it's disgusting, it's horrible. They may lose their tongue, they may lose their teeth. This is, by the way, why this cancer has a very high suicide rate. But they just won't accept any risk. The idea that there may be one or two people who will die early from it is just not acceptable.
Yes.
Because you are not supposed to do any harm. So we didn't know that initially, but it makes perfect sense. And in fact, there was one regulator, again, not the FDA, that told us they had been engaged in long discussions about this because they had never been faced with the question. And in fact, they're the ones who really went into great detail to explain the ethics and their thinking. They give longer meetings than FDA does, so they have the extra time. But I have to tell you, every regulator, including FDA, I know people say all kinds of things about FDA, we found them to be responsive, to care, but they also made clear they cannot change their procedures for us. So it looks really good. Yes, like you should help people. It's very hard to see. This is what physicians tell me, statisticians. It's very hard to see how the study is not going to succeed. But we cannot change the procedures for you, therefore you have to do it, period. It's that simple.
Yeah. When did this journey begin? And maybe you could give us a little bit of background on the nascence of Multikine and how long this road has been to get to this point.
No, I don't. I had no gray hair. I wasn't a grandfather.
Okay.
I wasn't even a father when I started. Does that give you an idea? Okay.
So just a few years ago.
Yes. Look, it's very simple. Normal people do not change the world. Okay. People who tell you everything's always good and goes in a straight line are lying. We all know that. This has been a story of persistence. We want to be on our deathbed knowing that, number one, we took care of our family and friends, and number two, we made a difference. Now, you can argue that helping dying cancer patients live a few months longer is you're helping, absolutely. But the much bigger help is the creation of a non-toxic cancer drug, because I don't know of one other than our drug today. And in addition, one that saves you up front, so you never become that dying cancer patient, which, by the way, destroys families, right?
Yes,
destroys families emotionally. It destroys families financially. What if we can avoid that? And that's what drives us. And by the way, Mrs. Clinton wrote a book years ago, It Takes a Village. And I said, nonsense. And the reality is Mrs. Clinton was right. It takes a village. We've been blessed with unbelievably phenomenal people who have said that we want to help you. And a lot of top consultants, top people all over the world have come to us and said, we want to help you for free because what you do is such a big deal. And if you succeed, it will have such enormous ramifications. Because think about it. Today it's head and neck cancer. Why shouldn't you apply this to breast cancer? Why not melanoma? Right? Yeah. Melanoma is the most responsive tumor to immunotherapy. Mm-hmm. We have 5 people, and this is head and neck cancer, which really doesn't react to anything and kills people rapidly. We have 5 people whose tumors were completely gone in 3 weeks.
In how long? 3 weeks?
Okay, this is an important part. It's so good talking with you because you pull the information out of me. Normally, a cancer treatment lasts for months, right? A monoclonal antibody like Keytruda, etc., chemo, radiation. We are only allowed to treat for 3 weeks because I'm not allowed to delay the surgery. And this is for any viewers, particularly if it's a serious cancer. The data is clear. If you delay your surgery, your survival is going to be negatively impacted. So therefore, the regulators know that. You're not allowed to delay the surgery, and US rules, they don't care about Canada where it takes longer, whatever. 3 weeks is all you get. Which, by the way, is a reason why many of the super drugs don't work in this setting. Many of the super drugs checkpoints have been tried in head and neck cancer in a similar setting, and they all failed because you only have 3 weeks and they require several months of treatment.
But that's incredible that because of the deadlines and the time constraints, that you're still able to prove that someone's cancer can vanish in 3 weeks.
Well, the sad thing there's what tongue cancers.
Okay.
The tongue still had to be removed. It was a clinical trial because while it looks like it was gone, you can't be 100% sure that it's gone, right? So many times you've heard the story. I've heard the story. Yeah. My sister is great. She's had chemo, radiation, breast cancer. It's gone. Oh, she's cured. And I don't say anything. I shut my mouth. 6 months later, oh, the tumor's back. A year later, she's dead.
Yeah.
We've all heard it. We've all seen it. So we feel the only way that you can kill these micrometastases, which make this happen, right? Because you can't see it. That means it's micrometastases, is through the power of your immune system. The best time to activate your immune system is while it's still healthy, which means it must be done before surgery, before radiation, and before chemo. Because afterwards, your immune system's shot.
That's right. That's
so that's what this is all about. Let me put it this way. Many people measure us by our share price, and it's been all over. 6 years ago, we were under $1. Then we went to $41, which is obviously a phenomenal ride. And now we're down again. But, we just got the FDA go-ahead on this, which tells you as a normal person or investor what? FDA, who sees everything, has reviewed it and feels that this is not only safe enough, but promising enough to be put into newly diagnosed patients, which honestly, they shouldn't allow you to do unless they think you have a good chance of success. And our data suggests that because the benefit is so big, this is another point. Many studies are a hypothesis. We've seen a tumor response, and now you have to prove that it increases your survival. We don't have that. We already know the survival in the defined patients. We've seen it. It is highly statistically significant, and it's massive. So we're just redoing what has already been done. And then obviously, if you're right, all these cancer drugs are worth billions of dollars. And honestly, again, we mustn't think of ourselves only. The goal is to turn it over to one of the big guys, because the drug should be developed for melanoma, for breast cancer, for cervical cancer, and other cancers. Then you create something that changes the lives of so many families and make money. It's great.
Yeah. Well, the fact that the FDA has given you this blessing to conduct the study and to move forward on this, what is next? So once you conduct the study, when, I realize you don't have a crystal ball, but when could be the soonest that we would actually see this drug on the market?
Well, there's several places to go. So first of all, right now, I have a completely different class of investor that's interested in us and talking to us. Because if I say something is great and data is good, it's not even a tenth of the value of FDA saying so, right? FDA is the final arbiter. So check. So new people are now interested. There are two ways to get to market. The first one is that you enroll the patients and you get what's known the tumor responses. We have shown that tumor responses and something else called downstage, meaning the disease gets better. When you have that, then you also have significantly increased survival. And that will be and by the way, the rules were changed. In the olden days, you could get accelerated approval and then promise to do a study. Mm-hmm. In December 22, they changed the rules. You now have to enroll the study, and then you can talk to them about it. So that's what we plan to do, but not just FDA. We're going to go to European and Canadian and British regulators and hope to get to market then. But every one of these studies has to be concluded with survival, whether you're Pfizer, CEL-SCI, or Merck, it's survival.
Yeah.
And that, by the way, is what also then gives these companies these multi-billion-dollar valuations, because most cancer drugs don't increase your survival much at all, or at all. Some of them don't increase your survival at all.
And the number of cancer patients certainly isn't going down. The last time I checked, are we seeing an increase in cancer diagnoses?
In head and neck cancer, it's actually increasing.
It is.
Yes. So, I mean, we see maybe, I don't know if about the US, but worldwide, the number is increasing.
Mm. And why is that, do you think? What causes head and neck cancer typically?
So it's typically smoking and drinking.
Yeah.
And then there's also HPV, human papillomavirus. We are focused, though, mainly on the worst part of head and neck cancer. You see, when you run a clinical trial, it's an artificial construct to come to market because it's all about the statistics. So saying people might get bored, hazard ratio, etc. But that's what the FDA is looking for, right? You don't bring a drug to market for the biggest possible market. No, you bring a drug to market in the area where there's the greatest need and where you have the best chance of success. So the way we selected our people, it's 100,000 people, which, by the way, still allows you to make it a multi-billion-dollar drug, okay? Because the prices for a cancer drug that increases survival is very, very high. And insurance companies have no problem paying. And by the way, ours is probably the most cost-effective one because we save your life right up front.
Yeah, yeah. And so, would this drug also be approved for not just adults, but young people as well?
No, but in Europe, they just gave us an exemption from having to do studies in young people. Oh. So that was very nice. That saves years and many millions of dollars.
Sure.
The US doesn't have the same kind of requirements. But it's mainly in older people, this disease, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you need to do is you need to get it to market. And then, so for example, Keytruda, the super drug by Merck, I think they're running 50 studies a year. That's why it's the super drug. They're getting it, to market everywhere. In the meantime, it's used by doctors for whatever, because they don't have effective treatments.
Mm-hmm.
So what we need to do at the right time is put this in the hands of one of the big guys who can run studies in all of these different cancers. And what's the downside? We know it's not toxic. It's 3 weeks. Your tumor may be gone. And we know that if you hit certain criteria, you're likely to have an incredibly large increase in survival. Mm. Sounds pretty good to me.
To me too. To me too, indeed. And when you mentioned Keytruda, we see the commercials on TV all the time. When are we going to see CEL-SCI, Multikine commercials? Can we expect to see this coming to market?
I thought it would go faster because I thought of this as a linear process.
Yes.
And as I realized, Thomas Edison, they say it took him 1,000 times to invent the light bulb. So let's say we're at 980. Are we a failure because we haven't gotten there yet? Or are we an almost massive success? right? Because that's where we are. We had all of these tries figuring out where the drug works and where it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And then you have to, for the regulators, prospectively in advance, define that study. So we figured it out. We know where it works. We have the survival. It's fantastic, but you haven't yet prospectively defined. So that is what you do in order to check the boxes that they need to see checked.
Yeah.
And that's how you come to market. And by the way,
yes,
investors have no patience. But there's a company, Immunogen, and many companies like this.
Sure.
Literally, they had to do confirmatory studies. And well, I can tell you, Immunogen was successful. And then AbbVie bought them last December for $10.1 billion. If you're successful and have a cancer drug that extends survival, the prices are massive. Therefore, in our case, the most important question is, do you think that this confirmatory study will be successful? Because the endpoint is overall survival in a disease where you haven't seen no survival benefit in literally decades. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you have no toxicity in your overall survival, it's really hard to see how you don't. And the study is done exactly the way FDA wants to see it done, because you're doing it in conjunction with them. It's really hard to see how you wouldn't come to market, right?
Sure.
So by the way, that's why after we made that announcement, I went in the market and I bought my stuff.
You did, yeah. Best to do it now.
You know, it's always something. It's like life. There's always something, always someone who doubts you, always someone who has no faith.
Sure.
But it's always been that way with these biotech companies, and they make it in the end, and then they're huge successes, and everybody wishes they'd owned them for the last 10 years.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, in hindsight, me too. I wish I'd owned Amgen for the last 20 years, except I didn't, okay?
Well, you can make up for it with the stock that you just bought.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. You know, I'm actually thinking of buying more.
Exactly. I might get on board with that.
Yeah, well, you're either committed or you're not. It's that simple.
Well, it's important not to look left or right, but straight ahead. And I think the wisdom, though, that you take from Thomas Edison, it can be applied to just about anything that we do, anything that we set out to accomplish. And clearly, this journey, when you talk about before you ever became a father or grandfather, that you've been on this path. And here we are today with these fabulous positive trials and data that you can now claim really bodes well for the future. And I think anybody who's watching this is going to be incredibly impressed and have hope. Anyone who is either undergoing cancer treatment or has been recently diagnosed or a family member, this offers hope that people didn't have before.
It's more than hope, because we have so much data. See, the risk, a normal confirmatory study has a 50-50 shot of being successful, but a normal confirmatory study is the idea that you show the tumor response and now you have to show that it extends survival. Well, that's a huge conjecture.
Yeah.
We're just repeating what we have already done.
Let me ask you one more question, Geert, if I may. So for someone who has yet to be diagnosed with a cancer, let's say now Multikine is applicable to treatment of other types of cancers besides head and neck. If you have the BRCA gene, for instance, with breast cancer, could it potentially have the use of taking it before being diagnosed with cancer, whereas preventative medicine would say, go ahead, have a double mastectomy just to be on the safe side?
No, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't.
We use cytokines. So our drug is a copy of what you and I are currently making.
I see.
It's what regulates our immune system. So it is non-specific. But an immune response needs to be specific. So you have a key for your house, I have a key. They looked up, we know their keys. But mine only works on my house, yours only works on your house, right? Mm-hmm. That is the specificity of an immune response. So if we both had the same tumor implanted on us, they would soon change to have different receptors, meaning you need a specific key for your tumor or for my tumor. Mm. So monoclonal antibodies have a general key, a master key. And it works maybe for 30%, 40% of the cases, but it doesn't work for the other ones. And then the tumor mutates and changes, and then the monoclonal doesn't work anymore. We don't have that issue. We're working these cytokines, kill cancer, that releases the antigen specific to you or to me, hopefully not, never us, right? But release specific to the patient.
Yeah.
And then the immune response is specific to that tumor's antigen. So it's a master key that becomes specific in each person's body, which is how our body works. We're not playing God. We're not trying to be smarter than the immune system. We're copying the immune system. And by the way, it cost us over $200 million to develop the manufacturing and build a manufacturing facility near Baltimore.
Wow.
That's a requirement. But we did it, right? And now we're in the end phase where you literally just have to, you've learned everything, and you have to put it into that final study. It's not that big, 212 patients, right?
Yeah.
And you do it in the final study. The chances are very good for success because we don't have to be half as good as we've already been in these patients. And then if you're successful, let's be realistic. You will probably sell the company to one of the big guys, not because it's all about money. We would like to make money, but because at that point, they are the best for developing it for multiple cancers and selling it worldwide.
Yeah, yeah.
Making it available worldwide. That's really the key. We're never going to do that with this pipsqueak little company, right? But, Layla, we are the best there is in this little area of the jungle, right? We know this jungle better than anyone else.
Such an education. Every time we meet, Geert, thank you so much for all this wonderful information. Now, for anyone who would like to learn more about your company and research, where should they go?
We have a website, www.cellsci.com. That's CEL-SCI, like cell science, but only one L and then SCI at the end with a dash in between, CEL-SCI.com. And our stock symbol is CVM, Charles Victor Mary. Just be aware, it's highly volatile, which sometimes works in your favor, other times doesn't. And but so when I tell you I bought stock, I'm crazy, right? Normal people don't change the world. My team is crazy. We believe that we can change the world. And so far, we have always been proven right, which is why we're still standing. And now we're here with an FDA go-ahead for a final confirmatory registration study.
Very exciting. This is very exciting, Geert. And I hope that we get to talk sooner than in a year from now, because it is always such a pleasure to talk with you and so fascinating. I learn something every time we meet.
Well, thank you. You're easy to talk to. It's good.
Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you very soon, Geert. Geert Kersten.
Thank you so much, then.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.